Alrighty. Yo, so before you ask any questions about anything, just give me a moment to explain all the black in the world and the concept that it is and why I'm bringing it up right now. So, roughly 5 years ago, going on 6 years ago, I made a video called All the Black in the World. I'll be sure to go back and put it in the description somewhere. And it was my explanation of the different genuses of Afro Indigenous, non Afro Indigenous, and everything in between that type of peoples that this land has to offer and that were found in different regions of the earth. This is about reach, which is the righteous, the elect, the anointed, the chosen, the holy. So when I say the reach, and I'm talking about all the black in the world, I'm speaking on a matter of a very select group within an umbrella group that has yet to be recognized to and for what it actually is. For example, as you guys can see on the thumbnail, there was a thing. It's called the Pan African Conference, and I'm looking at it right now. And it's Westminster Town Hall on the 23rd, 24th, and 25th of July, 1900. And it says like this: this conference is organized by a committee of the African Association for the discussion of the native races. Question and will be attended and addressed by those of African descent from all parts of the British Empire, the United States of America, Abyssinia, Liberia, Haiti, etc. You are cordially and earnestly invited to attend. Conferences morning 10:30 and evening 8. H.S. Williams, Honorable Secretary, 139 Palace Chambers, Southwest. So, without being overboard or being, in my own head about that, that is the crux of the matter that I talked about 5 years ago, going on six, is that, and I can't think of the brother's name right now who actually held the conference, but I wanted to break down how, because there are so many people who are not part of the same diaspora or the same lineage, you know, we can't do anything about that but accept it. Peace, brother. How you doing, family? You know, and so we have a group of individuals. So let's say it like this. Let's break them off into. I'm gonna go four groups. We might do five, but we have the Black Indigenous of America. We have Black Indigenous of Australia. We have the Black Indigenous Islanders, and then we have the Black Indigenous of all the other parts of the earth. Um, I'm not going to get into place of origin or where I believe some of these groups come from or where they even say they come from. What we're going to focus on is who of them are the reach, the righteous, the elect, the anointed, the chosen, the holy. So and that is the acronym that I'm going to use going forward for our people who are within that group, the reach. You see what I'm saying? Because that's who we're trying to get to. The actual group that is going to be the ones who make it out in the end. I can't speak for those that practice wickedness, that do wickedness, that love it and have no problem abiding in it. All I can do is speak to the matter and say what needs to be said. So let's talk about how in this conference in 121 years ago, they had this conference. And the conference itself, I could contend, did the damage that they sought to do. Because it would not have been unknown that some of these individuals who would be attending are not, in fact, the same biological individuals. I'll have several different videos in the description point at some point after this. I used to make it a pertinent issue that there were individuals who had straight hair, right? There were individuals who had curly like hair. There was individuals who had full blooms of facial hair. There was individuals who had relatively no facial hair. And so when you get to looking at how this all plays out and how it all works, you start to understand like, oh, okay, these are different groups of people. They're all not the same. They can't, for example, how do you explain? Because if you let Clovis Farrakhan, aka Dracula, I want to suck your blood, looking ass dude, right? Him. If you let that vampire tell you, he'll tell you that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, nothing honorable about that man, he'll tell you that he, in fact, was informed by his master, who would be the so-called Honorable Fard Muhammad, Wali D. Fard, him. He was told that black people once had straight hair and that they went into the jungles of Africa and that over a period of time, their hair began to curl up so that way it could be a natural defense to the environment. A complete, utter, bold-faced lie. Because how could he explain the people here in America who had curly hair and then the people here who had straight hair? Makes absolutely 0% sense. But none of them are the reach. So I'm not going to say that they don't matter, because they do, to the distinction that we need to know that they're not you. Just because you have a grandmother or a grandfather who had so-called native ancestry in this land doesn't mean that you yourself, by and large, are indigenous. You have no stake here. None. The reach understand that. The reach gets that much. But all others don't seem to, they can't put that into their minds for that to be the truth. Think about what I'm saying. They've told us for years and years and years, you're all just one big nig. If we're all just one big nig, then why don't we all think the same and act the same? Even if you contend that the wicked are estranged from the womb, meaning that a person who was meant, there are people who are born to do bad. There's Gentiles or whatever that are born to do evil. Like that's their intention. We're from their cellular makeup, their molecular makeup, their atomic makeup, subatomic, whatever you want to call it, right? That makeup is literally made to be someone who is antithetical to the environment and to all of the life around it. So it's no surprise that we have all this confusion about, okay, well, who's this group and who's that group? All right, either you accept that they put black people on ships, other blacks, mind you, so-called blacks, Negroid and Negro people, Afro and Afroid people, so-called people, put a group of individuals on boats and told them that these are your new masters and sent them out. They're just as bad, they're just as wicked, they're just as evil as the pigskin Gentile that oppresses you. Because at least the pigskin Gentile can't deny their part in the oppression. But those who look similar to you would invite you to a conference years after. Get what I'm saying? Black people hadn't even been free for 35 years, and they were trying to force Pan-Africanism down their throats. Does anybody understand the issue with that? Or am I the only one who sees that as problematic? So as opposed to blacks here being able to be left alone, they decided that no, we'll push and promote and propagate something that they can't even prove. There's no scientific evidence to a lot of the things that they claim. Scientific being what they acknowledge as credible information. So there is not enough credible information that actually verifies, vindicates, and edifies, therefore making it the truth, what they're saying. It's more or less like how if I have an old video and there's a link in the video and the link doesn't work anymore, you could claim I'm telling a lie. Even if the information that I'm telling you in the video was from that link, someone could claim that, oh, well, he's making all that up. No big deal. But the problem with this is bigger because it's someone telling you that even though we just sold y'all a handful of hundreds of years ago, right, a few centuries before this, we were literally selling y'all to these dudes. Now we want you to come back and act as if you're one of us. You have individuals who were in this land. Me and my brother Dre were talking about this before I started this up, and he made an excellent point when I was talking about how they came here and there were black indigenous who were pretty much buddy, chummy with the white folks. I'm not just getting into talking about how the white folks couldn't, so-called pigskin Gentiles, could not take care of themselves. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fact that these individuals were willfully engaging in activities that were detrimental to those who had been on the land, if not for thousands of years, for at least 1,000 years. You see what I'm saying? So even if these are Johnny-come-lately individuals to them, the group that brought themselves here aligned themselves with a certain group of Afroid or Negroid individuals, and these same Negroids were later betrayed. And then once they decided that they wanted to uprise, right? Once they decided that they wanted to fight back, it was far too late. Population had been decimated by disease and famine and the likes. So when you have all these misguided opinions, one moment, when you have all these misguided opinions about whether or not all black people are the same, or if that even matters, yes, it does matter. Because I can't expect someone who doesn't feel what I feel about a situation to go at it the same way that I'm going to go at it. Can we work together to some degree and to some accord? Sure. That's not impossible, but it's more feasible for you to work with someone who is already likened to you because they have an intent and a desire that's more likened to yours. That's why the Reach are who they are. They are the true meek who will inherit the earth one day. And don't get it confused about self-inflicted wounds and being cursed are not the same. You know, people will attribute a negative happening in their life to being, oh, this is because of the curses. But it's like you have to look at the curses and say, okay, well, what curse actually fits this instance? And if that instance, when we read it all the way through and understand that this and this and this has to happen, so you admit that your people did wrong. It can't be, oh, I'm indigenous, but I'm also an Israelite. The two things don't go together. You can't be both of them. You see what I'm saying? And you have a lot of people who they so badly want to be both that I know they're not the Reach. They can't be. Because the Reach understand, even if I have the blood of a Gentile coursing through my veins, this is what I look like. This is what I feel like. This is who I am. This is who I'm going to be. And I'm not going to compromise for anyone. But like I'll tell y'all face to face, I'm going to tell y'all right here, right now again. Anyone that will deny or not acknowledge the atrocity and the evils of slavery is either evil, mentally ill, right? Like they're actually literally gone, or they're incompetent. And being mentally ill and incompetent are not the same thing. They're not the same thing. So we have within the group of so-called black people, all the black in the world, we have within them a group who is mentally ill, just like the pigskin, evil, just like the pigskin, and incompetent, just like the pigskin. And you expect for there to be some sort of progress made. You have individuals who've pimped out the ideas that I promoted all by myself years ago. Small channel. Uh, uh, it's easy to take the information that I'm saying and regurgitate it in a different manner so that way people won't realize, even if I say they got this from me, look at the timelines, it doesn't matter to anybody because they're going to say, well, they made it blow up. But it's like, no, if I give you the idea, I made that do that. The Most High God gave me the idea, so he made that do that, not anybody. And so you have these guys and these gals who don't understand, like, you can't claim both these things and expect for someone like myself or anybody who is, I believe, of a certain category of peoples, the reach, to accept that. You don't have to, you don't have to lower yourself to being an indigenous person of this land. Lower being they're not chosen. Lower being they're not righteous. They're not holy. They're not elect. They're not anointed. They're not those things. How I know this? When would the righteous work with the devil? I mean, really, truly work with them. Right. It's not happening. There's certain things your ancestors were killed and murdered for because they wouldn't engage in those activities. Then the devil itself, himself or herself, felt it necessary to abdicate, to extricate, okay, to eradicate that individual or that person's from the earth. These cats was over here eating, these individuals, these people were over here eating cat, rat, bat, and dog, just like the Chinese. Filthy, nasty, disgusting. And folks want to claim them. They're running around here half naked with no clothes on, not living in homes. Want me to believe that these dudes were somehow the Hebrews. No, stop it. That's fake. That's a fanciful thought process for someone who wants everything to fit into what they believe. Fanciful at best. You can't get me to believe or to think that the so-called white man could tell you that you're not even a person, but yet you don't challenge everything they say based on that premise, but will accept what they tell you if it seems beneficial to you and your fragile egos. That's the real problem with black people, most of them, that their egos are so fragile, their feelings are so fragile, they can't be trusted. How can you trust somebody who will literally loan themselves out to any lineage, to any race, if they think it's beneficial to them? I'm going down in the ship I came in on. Can you hear me? 1900, 121 years ago, so-called, because y'all know that I know that there's less days in the year than they say, but we're going to go with that. 121 so-called years ago, these individuals took it upon themselves to say, hey, let's get everybody together, even if they haven't been oppressed the same way, and let's talk about it. Do y'all realize that some of the worst atrocities that the Germans, the Deutsch, the French, the Spanish, the Italians, who else? The Portuguese, if I didn't bring them up, who else? Anybody in that general area close to the Mediterranean, close to the so-called Horn of Africa. Most of the evil things they did happened after 1900. Sure, there's some atrocities before that, but I'm talking about the ones that are documented and are the worst happened after 1900. So it tells you that Africa was in a different position at 1900 than it was just 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years later. Y'all have to understand this. Why do you think they call it Pan-Africanism? The only pans I know are used for cooking. Number one. Number two, the term African, that's not even their true indigenous, that's not the true name of the indigenous people of the land. Right. So you want me to take the identity of an individual that could pass for Gumby, just blue black, and I'm supposed to be okay with that. Even though the same pigskin devil in the Catholic Encyclopedia will tell you that the term Negro and African are not to be thought as synonymous. We're different people culturally, linguistically, we're built physically differently, all that stuff. And I'm not talking about individuals who were already servants in the land, stayed there for the hundreds of years that we were in indentured hardcore servitude, okay? You can call it slavery, you can call it hardcore indentured servitude, whatever you want to call it. It was terrible. The worst of it known on this side of Moses, as far as I'm concerned. I'm not worried about someone that's a sub people getting treated wrong because they allowed for those who were real people to get out of their grasp and out of their control, thinking that what was accomplished by those real people, those sub things could accomplish. Won't even get carried away. The point being, though, is that all the black in the world, y'all, everyone's not the same. They're not the same. You have biracials who come from different genealogies of so-called blacks, and the biracials don't even look the same. So that's how I know that folks don't really get, like, you're not dealing with who you think you're dealing with. And no matter what anyone tells me, I've known more than a handful of individuals who've had a light-skinned or a dark-skinned parent to go on and have children with one of these Gentiles, pigskin, swintillion, and literally the baby will come out with white like skin, pale white. Like you can tell they're not an Anglo-European. You can tell there's something else. They look way more like a Mongoloid. That's neither here nor there. But the point being this, though, that the skin tone doesn't matter when you talk about the offspring produced. And so you have these guys and these gals who will say, well, my baby's still black. You got this thing that's perpetrating to be one of us, to be a real actual Afro-black person. Now they're taking an identity. You see them. You see how this all works? How you have individuals who wouldn't even fit into the category of who you actually are all the way, because one of the parents does not fit the genetic biological makeup. Yet they would force onto you the idea that if one of the parents is this, that means they're automatically this. That's bullshit. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it. It's a sickening thing to have to watch an entire people devote themselves to causes that are not their fights, that are not their battles. They want to be indigenous to the land, and they want to be the children of people who were brought here on boats. You're not both. You're one. Your paternal biology, meaning who your father is, dictates this. That's a fact. You know, they'll tell you that a dude who has a white mother and a black father, he's black. Guy that has a black mother and a white father, he's black too. How is that? How is that? How can you have a situation where how can you have a situation where the two things, both those things can't be true? They can't. They want to say, oh, the black genes are so strong. If they're so strong, then how can black people push out? Obviously, they produce albinos amongst themselves. So how can you say that the black genes are so strong, knowing that albinism is a recessive trait that a whole lot of us carry around? And this was long before we were ever dealing with any swine skin, two-legged Gentiles. Way before that. So no one can convince me or get me or make me to believe that something like that is the case. It can't be the case. I know it's not the case. Folks talking about, I want to hear the facts. These are the facts. How many guys in the NBA can you think of right now who have white looking skin, but you know for a fact one of their parents is black, and it's more than likely their father. And nobody wants to hear that. So you can't tell me, oh, well, so black isn't a color, is it? It can't be. Because you'll call this other dude with white like skin black, even though they should be considered mixed. Right. Of the mixed multitude. That's what they should be considered. But people will say, you know what? It's not a big deal. They're still us. But in all actuality, they don't have two parents that look like black people. Only one of them looks like an egg. So I'm trying to figure out at what point in all the black in the world do we stop accepting everybody's visas? Right on? Like at what point does it take you have to have two legitimate Afro black parents to be considered an Afro black person, an Afro person? If you want to be black with asterisks next to it, fine. But what does it take for the reach to be acknowledged for who they are? Shouldn't have to beg nobody for nothing. Excuse me. Shouldn't have to make a gesture that makes it to seem as if we're desperate to be given the credentials that we righteously deserve. We're not desperate for it. What it is we're aggravated and we're tired, and the indignation is growing within us because we are being told to accept a lesser lineage that does not espouse our true peculiar nature, and it does not espouse our righteousness, our electness, our um, being anointed, chosen, holy, right? All those things. It doesn't explain that. It doesn't go into that. These are individuals who, by and large, were betrayers to their own people. And they're part of the reason why they're in the situation that they're in now. Totally wiped out, being considered a people that they're not, have not accomplished the greatness of the people that they're being considered, right? But they get to live on those laurels. That is unfortunate. See, the same materials that were mined and eventually corralled or as I like to say, sequestered, once they were, made to be available in abundance in this land, the creation started to happen. But the problem is that those resources were always here for these native indigenous peoples to have indulged in. They did not do as such. But the people that were sold from Africa had took that land from whatever it was and built it into a learning capital of the entire earth, where all kingdoms came there to learn from, guess who? That's right, your Afro people. So now that you have this similar atmosphere here in America, you have to wonder, why didn't they have it like this already if they're truly the same people? Oh, you could say it was not to destroy the earth, but why would they not have mechanisms in place so that way they could prevent others who would want to destroy the earth from destroying it? Thank you very much. If all that, if blacks here weren't on tribalism, how did they fall out with other tribes? Riddle me that, Batman and Batwoman. Since you have all these individuals who claim that, oh, we don't practice tribalism here in America, that's a motherfucking lie. If you're not from a certain neighborhood, niggas will kill you. That's tribalism, homie. But yet, they don't practice that here. That's the kind of shit I'm talking about. How can they be the reach? How can they be the righteous, the elect, the anointed, the chosen, the holy? How can they be them? Am I tripping? How can they be something that they have shown you that they are not? And how can someone who has shown you that they're not something be what it is that you're calling them? It's no different than when Swintillians claim to be Romans and the barbarians, Greeks and the Gauls. It makes no sense. How can those who are the invaders look just like the indigenous and no one ever heard of you? Came out of nowhere. How can that be the case? It's no different than when the Chinese try to tell their story. So-called Chinese, the Mongols, right on? And the Khans. And they won't show you. Yo, look, if the folks who were indigenous look just like the invaders, that doesn't make any sense. Never heard of them until when? Come on, man, that's backwards. Only in make-believe land and fake it world, right? In the pseudo earth, can you and I be a person who's being told to believe something that there's actually very little evidence to back up what they say? If I could carve a statue, I could carve a marble statue right now that looks like it's 1,000 years old. Right. But the difference between stone and marble is that when it gets weathered, you can actually see how old it is. And the marble that they show us, for the most part, is still pretty new. But them stones be having like those big old water spots. Like y'all know what I'm talking about when you see a stone statue and there's like water spots. There's marble statues out here that have lions on them on one end, on the far end, and on the closer end over here, there's like ladies, right? Listen, nobody can convince me that the statues that are up, the lion statues look as old as any Grecian statue I've ever seen. They look as old as any of those. So how are you going to tell me that those are thousands and thousands of years old when at a park that's barely 113 years old across the street from me, President Theodore Roosevelt himself consecrated the park, if you will. So can't nobody tell me, right on, can't nobody tell me that, oh, that's not old enough. No, those are 100 and something years old, and they look just as old as any marble statue. Brother Andre would let y'all know that marble looks way too fresh to be as old as they're claiming it is. It's not made out of stone like the old stuff. So that makes people wonder, like, that's awkward. But having said that much, how can you believe you're somebody that you're not? See, I think it's weird that islanders get upset when Africans play them down to being nothing other than an African. And the islanders are like, no, man, we're from the island. And you have individuals who are like, bro, all my family has ever known are these islands. We were around before slavery was even invented in these islands. There's people like that. So they're like, I ain't no African. The Africans are like, oh, that means that your people left the land long, 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 long ago. And it's like, that's such a real punk ass way of trying to minimize another person's experience. If they're not these people who they say they're not, they're probably not them. Case in point, the people who live in Papua New Guinea, Melanesia, right? Fiji, what's that other island over there? I can't think of it right now. It won't come to me. But there's another little island over there where there's a whole bunch of black people. And I'm not talking about Tonga, because that's in Polynesia. But follow me. You have these black people who will tell you, for as long as we've known, for thousands of years, we've lived on these islands. We don't know nothing about no Bible. We don't know nothing about none of that stuff. And they have their own prophecies that might coincide with certain things, but their life was not revolved around the laws of Moses. You get what I'm saying? They don't know anything about no King Solomon. And they call it the Solomon Islands, and people falsely allude or will believe the idea that Solomon sent people over there, aka giants. There's no proof to that. There's no edification to that. And the scriptures that they'll give you, I could contend, mean other things. So, that being said, you have a group of people who look very similar to black people, but will tell you, no, we're not them. We're not, they're like, we might be genetically related somewhere down the line, but they're like, we're not them. We're totally different. We have a different way of life. What we believe is different. How we practice what we believe is different. It's real like that, y'all. That's just the way it is. And you have all these people who would rather me and you fail and fall. Fail being the idea that we don't ever reach our fullest potential as who we truly are. And fall being that we fall for the trickery, we fall for the wickedness. Therefore, we fall in the trap of death. And there is no escape for anyone from that. But what I believe is something greater than that. That's just like these guys will tell you about ancestral worship. How can you worship your ancestors and there not be a most high God? There not be a creator? Think about what I'm saying. These cats can worship their ancestors and there's no creator. Does that make sense to anybody? So if I had to choose, and I'm going all the way back to the very beginning, Adam's direct ancestor, if you will, is his creator. Why would you not want to pray to that who created who you come from? If you want to talk about ancestor worship, why not pray to that individual? Right. And see where that gets you. Try to get in contact with that individual. Try to find the ways to actually connect with them. Right. That's too difficult, I see. To actually have to live your life with some sort of regulations and standards is too much. Some sort of laws and order, statutes, charges, you see, commandments. Ordinance. Being law and ordinance. Law and order. But it's too difficult for most people, I see that, to actually have to have some kind of standard. They want to be blessed. They don't want to do any of the hard work. And they just want to complain about the so-called enemies of their ancestors, which many of their ancestors are turncoats. Do they want to hear that part? Do they even want to accept that? Many of their ancestors are turncoats. Many of the 2/3 who are going to die come from those who were turncoats back in the day, come from the same turncoats who got us brought here to this land. Right. The same strangers within that get high above. They're the head and we're the tail. Those individuals. And all those who wanted to be like them of our people. And the same thing goes for those that are indigenous. I have blood that's indigenous to this land. But I don't claim to be no aboriginal. I'm a straight nig who is of the bloodline of Abraham, of Isaac, of Jacob, of the house of Israel. If I have to say it, I will. And I know I say I could be the stranger, I could be. But at this moment, I'm just going to claim something so that way y'all understand that's where I'm at. You're not going to make me not make my people consider it by me. Oh, well, I'm actually this too. So that means that, I get this and this. No. I'm willing to give up whatever you want to give these indigenous folks here for the reward that you owe my people who were brought here on ships. Because on the off chance that there's somebody in my indigenous bloodline who was unrighteous and a turncoat, and on the off chance that somebody from that bloodline of that ship was unrighteous and a turncoat, I'm not. That's not who I profess, proclaim, nor practice to be. So I'm saying that I don't believe I come from roots on either side of the turncoat. However, many of us, many of the people who consider to be us, do come from individuals who are not righteous. And we have to accept that, acknowledge that, and then we have to somehow make the adjustment. Okay, what am I going to do differently than what they did? So that way I don't find myself falling victim to my own wicked imagination or my own evil temptations. Because what's going to happen, what's bound to happen for sure, is bound to be a group within the people who are much more like myself, who probably will be younger than me, who are going to begin to see that they have no hope. Not in this land. There's no hope for a better anything for them here. There'll always be second fiddle, even if your ancestors did all the work to build this place. See, I'm over playing second fiddle to anyone. If they're so damn good, let them take over. Let them take the reins. Let them take over. Let them do what they must. This is their land. Let them tell the story. This is theirs. Let it be their land. Let it be their land. But you know how many of those indigenous didn't help anything get built, but were the bitter niggas who were the first crime committers once black people got free? Were the habitual offenders on the plantation that got niggas in trouble constantly? Were those same indigenous folks who could never shake the fact that this indeed is their land? And black people who were brought here didn't have that same connection to the land, so therefore they don't have that kind of connection with one another. Right. That's what most people don't recognize. But all the black in the world doesn't mean that we can't work together on some accord to try to meet at a comfortable medium. They want reparations, rightfully so, deservedly so. But we can't get in a time machine to see whose ancestors were truly bootleg and who were authentic. And that's the problem. So you have folks who have suffered, but maybe you're suffering because of someone in your actual genealogy. And it's not only is it just not fair, but it's unrighteous and it's untenable to want me or anyone else to have to carry that water and to carry that weight. That's not my burden to have to handle. You see what I'm saying? That's not anybody's burden to have to handle. People should be able to do what they have to do and be blessed while they're doing whatever there is that they do. They shouldn't have to hurt anyone to do it. They shouldn't have to hurt anything to do whatever it is that makes them truly happy. You shouldn't have to destroy what someone else has to make yourself feel as if you're validated and what you're doing is meaningful. That's just backwards. But the problem becomes, and the problem is entailed when you have individuals, once again, who have a different, how they're built from the inside out is different. No matter how they look on the outside, they're built differently. They feel differently about things. They act differently about things. And yet, because it's so hard for a lot of these guys to shake the fact, well, my grandmama has straight hair, or my granddaddy has straight hair. Right. Black native. Okay. But what does your father right now look like? Oh, well, he's a nig. Because his people was all slave niggas. But on my mama's side, or it could be their father's father, but whoever this guy's actual immediate parent is, right? Because maybe it's his grandfather's daughter who's married to his father. Well, your daddy's a nig, bruh. You can say whatever you want to about your mother, or your father's mother, or your father's whoever. You see what I'm saying? Or your mother's father. That is the type of thing I'm talking about. Is that as opposed to them saying, all right, two different bloodlines got together and became one, they meshed together, they became as one race, as it is explained in the book of the Genesis, when Dinah, the daughter of Israel, is violated by I can't think of the dude's name right now. Is it Sikkim? It might be Sikkim. Anyway, she's violated, and her brothers Levi and Simeon devise a plan. They go all the way out. They go all out, and but before this happens, the individual who did what he did to their sister, he says, "Hey, I I think I want y'all to come stay with us and be among us, and let us become as one race." Now, folks will say that the word race is a make believe. It's a construct that's make believe. It doesn't exist. I'm going to take what is written in a book that was around thousands of years ago over what somebody's conjecture filled opinion has to say about it. That being said, they were wanting to become one people. These are individuals who already look more alike than not, but they understand that they have different genealogy. Right. That even if we ultimately have the same progenitor all the way back, our immediate progenitors are not the same people. And that matters. And so I not only feel, but I know that there are too many people who are literally being misled and misguided because they believe something that has no real merit for them. What good does it do for you to call yourself indigenous? Right. So that means that your ancestors got their asses beat, their land took, as opposed to just coming here as a slave already and turning something that was not very much into a whole lot. Remember when I read to y'all that they had to get the black people here? I mean, that they had to get the African to come and do the slave work because the native Indians weren't having it? What color do you think those native Indians were? And what do you think they look like? Right. So when you have this sort of dynamic, it's difficult at best to have any sort of understanding with people who will displace or remove from their minds all other evidence. They will pick one instance, one single instance, and they'll say this applies to all of them. So even if you wanted to pick, let's say, the Seminole Indians, who ended up on the Trail of Tears in the end, even if you pick them and say, okay, well, they resisted and they had some sort of successful resistance, how many other groups did not successfully resist? How many other groups were wiped out to the man, to the woman, to the child, to the very last person, and became as a ghost upon the earth, as if they never existed? Whole groups. And they would have you to believe, they would have you to put in your mind that somehow that is righteous, that you claim to be someone that you're not. I met a chick one time who told me that their people had over 300 years of paperwork to prove who they were. And I had to tell her straight up, but that means that y'all was never slaves. Because ain't no slaves got no damn paperwork. What kind of slave was that that's holding on to paperwork? Field nigga. No, had to have been some house niggas. It's the only way. Otherwise, there would be way more evidence of things like that because more field niggas would have had shit like that. If it was really what they needed somebody to know, we want you to know what ship your people got off of in Virginia. What the fuck? That didn't even sound right. They were breaking up families, literally pulling and tearing people apart while their tears and snot falling down their face. Never to see their loved ones ever again. And they want you to believe, and some of these individuals are happy to believe that they've had paperwork this whole time. That's how you know that these niggas are retarded. Once again, you're either mentally ill, incompetent, or evil if you cannot acknowledge the atrocity that slavery was. That it is. It's not only a bad thing or a negative thing, or an antithetical or diametrically opposed thing when someone says that I'm an individual who they're really not. But what it also does is that it creates more confusion in a sea of confusion and misunderstanding. So it will give to individuals something that they probably never would have believed to be the truth, and it's not true. And there's no one, when I say no one, there is no one right now who is willing to tell you, hey, even if you look a similar, it doesn't make you the same. Case in point, just because an animal is found in the wild, they call them wild cats or they call them small cats, whatever, whichever one you want to call it, right? But it's an animal that looks like a domesticated house cat, but they're completely wild and they are viciously ferocious. So just because it looks the same as this other animal doesn't mean that it is the same as this other animal. You get what I'm saying? Like you can't get a like even if you get a wild cat out the wild, you breed it and then you keep breeding them, they virtually you can't domesticate them because their internal nature is to be who they are. You see what I'm saying? So no matter what people think, that's just like with the dog and a wolf. Wolves and dogs are different animals. They have a different their most base genetics might be similar or set in a similar arrangement, but the overall finality, totality of what their gene structure looks like and their output and how they're put together is different. So even when you have someone who looks similar to you, because their internal makeup may have a similar biological pattern, if the overall biological makeup is not the exact same, they are not you no matter what they look like. So I can't stress it enough. You have individuals who have a parent who is Afro or Afroid. They will go and reproduce with someone who is not Afro and is also not very dark skinned. The child will sometimes come out looking more like the person who is not Afro and not dark skinned. This happens often enough that these individuals are considered passers. Okay? So there's a lot of folks who pass now for Afro people, but don't truly have actual Afro hair. Looks something similar to it, but if you touch it and sometimes if you just look at it closely, you can tell, oh, that's not an Afro. That's just really, really curly hair. Not that our hair is not really, really, really curly, but there's a difference in the grade and the texture and how it feels. So sometimes we just have to stand back and with both eyes wide open, analyze the situation and say, okay, what of this does apply to me? What of this does not apply to me? Okay, who am I for real? It would be far better for everyone who is not an Afro or Afroid person to stop claiming to be of that lineage and to stop impersonating or perpetrating something that they're not. So that way, those who are forced to look in the mirror and to give to some form of consideration that they may be something that they don't want to be, which is a betrayer of the Most High God. If you are truly of the seed of Israel, your people betrayed the God of glory. You in turn, inevitably, undoubtedly have betrayed the Most High God of glory through the acts of your ancestors. And maybe in your own life, you've done something that merits and that is worth punishment and rebuke from the Most High God, reprimand and admonishment. You see what I'm saying? That is actually deserving of consequence. So when folks want to say one thing, and then for those who are not of the seed of the people and claim to be that they are the seed of the people, it would give them the chance to finally say, okay, we've put ourselves over them long enough. We've used their status long enough. You get what I'm talking about? We've stood on their shoulders long enough. We have to stand up for ourselves. And if we can't, we need to get behind them because us being in front of them has been counterproductive at best. And at worst, it's been a trap and a snare unto all of us. Because they'll let or allow an individual to get to a place in society they might not normally be able to achieve. Prime example, Carmen Best was the chief of police of the Seattle Police Department during the infamous Chop Zone. This same Carmen Best, I met face to face personally on a few different occasions. She had the chance and the choice when I first met her and I addressed her about what was going on over 3 years ago. I met her in September of 2018. 3 years ago, she could have addressed my situation, could have squashed the ERPO, could have got all those things pushed away. Do you know that she has the nerve and audacity, the unmitigated gall to talk about how she faced racism and misogyny and sexism during her time as an officer? And I'm just sitting here thinking, like, if you faced all those things but didn't believe that what I was saying was based upon race, why should I take anything that you're saying seriously? Secondly, she don't grow no afro. She got that funny straight hair. Right, right. But she'd have been able to stand on the shoulders of black people, real Afro people, her whole life. She is the devil. And it's because of individuals like that that we don't have anything. Because they would rather be in a position where they're above us. At least I'm better than them. At least I won't get treated like them. But at the truth of the matter, though, is that if she could fix her lips to complain about treatment that she allowed to be administered by a, again, met me face to face. She can't deny this. I told her it was racially based. I told her this, that, and the third. Did she do anything about it? Nope. She did nothing. Their city's on fire. The city of Seattle, everywhere in the U.S. on fire right now, but Seattle in particular, I'm a key in on that city because it's in my state. It's in the state that I live in. So not only has it progressively gotten worse since they took me off the streets, since they removed my presence, as Brother Wickham so eloquently put the other day, I can't feel bad for them. But what I really won't do as a black man, so-called black man with brown skin and afro hair and a beard, I won't allow myself to be made into her flunky or her lackey and say, oh, I get it now. That's why she didn't help me, because she was already going through racism there at the department. That's stupid. If anything, that should have been more of a reason for her to do something and to have flex whatever little muscle she did have to flex. But when you're afraid of your own mortality, and she ended up bowing out, she just resigned. Now think about that. You resigned because of what happened at Chop. Chop was because of something that police did to a black man. You failed to even acknowledge what I was going through as a black man from white, so-called white police officers. That's the kind of shit I'm talking about. And people want you and me to sing kumbaya with those that are just as much our enemies as any one of these swine skin devils. Right. You think because they got brown skin, they're all good. And I can't stand that term, all skin folk and kinfolk. But the thing is, just because you acknowledge them to being kinfolk to you, skin folk to you, you don't even get that. Yo, all these dudes, they're all not your people. Even if they look similar to you, they still might not be your people. You have to have a full-blown observation and analysis of these individuals before you can go on and to choose to make that kind of decision. But most people don't realize or recognize that. What they tell themselves is something that gives them a level of confidence, and it gives them a level of a reassurance that they won't be in a position of being rebutted or being somehow made fun of, right on, being humiliated, right? When in all actuality, their humiliation shouldn't even be anything that they're worried about. Is it not humiliating enough that we come from the seed of slaves? That's not humiliating. That's not embarrassing to you, right? That doesn't bring them any shame. So if that doesn't bother them, then why should anything else that anyone has to say to them bother them? That's just a thought. That's just a thought. Don't take it personal. All too often, You have people who are put in positions that they should not be in because they're not fit to lead, and they're the best leaders are better followers. Let me say it like that. Any excellent leader you know, talking about a true leader, at one point in their life, before they realized that they had the ability to lead, they were the number one follower. They were the biggest follower. Because that's how you learn to lead, is by following capable leadership. Leaders are not born, they're made. Did you hear me? Leaders are not born, they are made. God be with us all. God be with me. God be with y'all. Right on. As I get ready to head out and close out this little session, I can't help but to believe that there's going to be more people who will, for the sake of being comfortable, will continue down the path of, I'm an Egyptian, I'm a Nubian, I'm an African, I'm a Aboriginal. And you're gonna have a whole bunch of these other people who are out here claiming to be, oh, I'm for sure of the seed of Jacob. I'm from Judah. I'm from Levi. I'm from Benjamin. And these cats are as indigenous, Aboriginal people as they come. Have no sort of, once again, they have no connection to any of the things that are put and placed out for the true, for the reach, for the righteous, elect, anointed, chosen, holy. Can you dig that? They have nothing. Brothers and sisters, I get ready to head out. I head out on this note. I bless y'all for listening. I bless y'all for being with me. I ask you now to ask yourself this question. If Brother Demetrius was, dead on point about the police officer situation this year, and to a lesser degree, I've been right about black people suffering. The ultimate thing hasn't happened yet. I'm still waiting. I haven't seen the accumulative effect of all these negative decisions actually play out and become something dastardly for us all. But when it does, if there's any internet left, I'll upload my thoughts on that situation as well. But if there's not, brothers and sisters, I really do pray that the flight does not come in the winter. I really do pray. I pray that for us all. Because a lot of people ain't gonna make, when the real thing happens, it's gonna be bad. Like Lightning Hopkins said, it's a sin to be rich, but it's a low down shame to be poor. It's a sin to be a liar, but it's a low down shame to not know who you are. Can you dig that? With that said, all the black in the world, the reach who will make it, the righteous, the elect, the anointed, the chosen, the holy. My heart goes out for you, to your families. I pray that you are well. I pray that tomorrow is better than today, and that next week is better than the last. We're out.